Dirt pressed into her mouth like a fist trying to silence her forever. She didn't know her name. She didn't know where she was. She only knew one thing. She couldn't breathe. Her eyes snapped open to absolute darkness. Not the darkness of a bedroom at night. Not the darkness when you close your eyes and wait for sleep. This was different. This was the kind of darkness that swallowed everything. The kind that made you wonder if your eyes were even open at all. Something hard dug into her ribs. Stone. Cold stone that felt like ice against her skin. She tried to move her arm, but it barely shifted. Soil collapsed around her wrist. Her fingers twitched, and she felt it. The terrible truth pressing down on her chest like 1,000 hands. She was buried. The realization hit her like lightning splitting a tree. Her heart hammered so hard she thought it might crack her ribs from the inside. Panic flooded her veins, hot and wild. She wanted to scream, but her mouth was full of earth. Gritty, bitter, suffocating. She turned her head, just an inch, and spat. The dirt clung to her tongue, her teeth. She spat again, gasping, dragging in a thin thread of air that tasted like mold and stone, and something older. Something wrong. Above her, she heard it. Footsteps. Heavy, deliberate. Moving across what sounded like wooden planks. The sound echoed down through the earth, through the rock, straight into her bones. Someone was walking above her. Someone was up there in the light, in the air, while she was down here in the dark, buried alive. Her chest squeezed tight. The air was running out. She could feel it. Every breath came harder than the last, like trying to drink through a straw that kept getting smaller and smaller. Her lungs burned. Her head felt light, floaty, like it might drift away from her body if she wasn't careful. No. No, she wouldn't die here. Not like this. Not in the dark, alone, forgotten. She had to move. Her fingers curled, nails scraping against stone. The space around her was tiny, barely bigger than a coffin. She could touch the ceiling of earth above her head if she lifted her hand. The walls pressed in on both sides. It was a tomb. They'd buried her in a tomb. But why? Why was she here? What had happened? The questions swirled in her mind. But there was no time for answers. No time for anything except survival. She pressed her palms flat against the earth above her and pushed. Nothing moved. She pushed harder, her arms shaking with effort. A few grains of dirt sprinkled down onto her face, into her eyes. She blinked them away, tears mixing with the grime. Push, push, push! Her muscles screamed, her shoulders burned. But the earth didn't budge. It was packed too tight, too heavy. Tons of soil pressing down, crushing her little pocket of air into nothing. She dropped her hands, gasping. Her breath came in short, desperate gulps. The darkness spun around her. Her vision blurred, though there was nothing to see anyway. Just black. Just endless, suffocating black. The footsteps above stopped. She froze, listening. Her heartbeat roared in her ears like ocean waves crashing on rocks. But beneath that sound, she heard something else. Voices, muffled, distant, words she couldn't make out. Were they looking for her? Were they coming to dig her up? Or had they put her here on purpose? That thought sent ice flooding through her veins. What if they wanted her dead? What if they were up there right now, celebrating, thinking she was already gone? Rage sparked in her chest. Small at first, like a match being struck in the dark. But it grew, it spread. It turned into a fire that burned hotter than her fear. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction. Whoever they were, whatever they'd done, she would not die here. Her hands moved again, this time to the sides. She clawed at the dirt walls, fingers digging deep. Her nails bent backward, and pain shot up her fingers. She didn't stop. She scraped and clawed and tore at the earth like an animal trying to escape a trap. Soil packed under her nails. One of them snapped, a sharp crack, followed by hot, wet pain. Blood. She tasted it when she pressed her fingers to her mouth without thinking. Copper and salt. But she kept going. She twisted onto her side, her shoulders screaming in protest. The space was so small she could barely move. Every shift sent dirt cascading down around her. It filled her hair, her ears. But she didn't care. She had to make the space bigger, had to find a way out. Her fingers hit something solid. Wood. Old wood, splintered and rough. A beam? Part of a floor? The footsteps above had started again. Slower this time. Pacing. Back and forth, right over her head. She pressed her ear to the wooden surface and listened. Her heartbeat still thundered in her ears, but beneath it, beneath even the sound of her own ragged breathing, she heard something else, a pulse. Not her pulse. Something different. Something that didn't match the rhythm of her heart. It thrummed through the earth, through the stone, through her very bones. Low and steady and powerful. Her vision flickered. For just a second, the darkness wasn't quite as dark. Tiny sparks danced at the edges of her sight, silver and bright like stars being born. What was that? She blinked hard, but the sparks were already gone. The darkness pressed in again, heavier than before. Her lungs ached. Each breath was a struggle now. The air was almost gone. Fear clawed at her throat. Real fear. The kind that made her want to curl up small and wait for it all to be over. But the pulse kept thrumming, steady, insistent, alive. And then she felt it. Not outside her, but inside. Deep in her chest, right beneath her breastbone. A warmth, a pressure, like something was waking up. Something that had been sleeping for a very long time. Her hands began to tingle. Not from the cold. Not from the pain. This was different. It felt like lightning lived under her skin, crackling and wild and desperate to break free. She didn't understand it, didn't know what it meant. But she knew, somehow she knew, that it was hers. This power, this strange, terrifying energy. It belonged to her. She pressed both palms against the wooden beam above her head. The tingling intensified, spreading up her arms, across her shoulders, down her spine. Her whole body hummed with it. The darkness flickered again. Silver light danced across her vision, brighter this time. And for just a heartbeat, she could see through the earth, through the stone, through the wooden floor above, a room, a ceremonial hall with high ceilings and carved pillars. Candles burning in iron holders, and shadows, human shadows, moving between the flames. Then it was gone. The vision snapped off like a candle being snuffed out. But she'd seen it. She'd seen through solid earth and stone. How was that possible? The warmth in her chest grew hotter. Not painful, but intense. Building, rising, demanding release. She heard another sound now. Not footsteps, not voices. Something else. A presence. Someone standing just outside the walls of this place. Someone who shouldn't exist. Someone who felt both familiar and completely foreign. Her breath caught. Who was out there? The silver sparks exploded across her vision again, and this time they didn't fade. They grew brighter, wilder, spreading like fire through dry grass. Her hands burned with power she didn't know how to control, and then the beam cracked, a sound like thunder splitting the sky. The wood splintered under her palms, and light, real light, poured through the gap. Not silver this time. Golden. Warm. Beautiful. She gasped, sucking in fresh air that tasted like rain and pine trees. Her head cleared instantly. The floating feeling vanished, replaced by sharp, crystalline focus. The crack widened. More light. More air. The pressure in her chest built higher, higher, until she thought she might explode from the inside out. She pressed harder, and the power surged through her arms. The beam shattered completely. Wood and earth and stone burst upward like a geyser erupting from the ground. She launched herself through the opening, arms flailing, legs kicking. Debris rained down around her. She heard shouting, shocked, angry voices. But she didn't look back. Couldn't look back. Her body tumbled across cold stone floor. Pain shot through her shoulder, her hip, her knee. She rolled to a stop and tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't hold her. She collapsed, gasping, shaking, covered in dirt and blood and splinters. But she was out. She was free. The ceremonial hall spun around her. Candlelight. Pillars carved with symbols she didn't recognize, faces staring at her in horror, people in dark robes backing away, hands raised like she was something dangerous. Maybe she was. Her hands still glowed with that silver light, pulsing in time with her heartbeat. She stared at them, not understanding, not caring. All that mattered was escape. She forced herself to her feet, wobbling, nearly falling. Her body screamed at her to stop, to rest, to give up. But that voice, that insistent, powerful voice deep in her chest, roared louder. Run! So she ran. She bolted toward the nearest opening, a wide archway that led to darkness. Her feet slapped against stone, then dirt, then grass. Cold air hit her face like a slap. The smell of rain and earth and growing things filled her nose. She was outside. Thunder cracked above her head. The sky opened up, and rain poured down in sheets. Within seconds, she was drenched, her hair plastered to her face, her clothes clinging to her skin. But the rain felt good. Clean. Alive. She ran into the forest, branches whipping at her face and arms. Roots tried to trip her, but she leaped over them, stumbled through them, crashed through them. Her breath came in ragged sobs. Her legs burned, but she didn't stop. The storm raged around her, mirroring the chaos inside her own chest. Lightning split the sky, turning everything white for a heartbeat before plunging it back into darkness. Thunder shook the ground beneath her feet. She didn't know where she was going, didn't know what she was running from or what she was running toward. She only knew she had to keep moving, had to put distance between herself and that place, those people, that tomb they'd buried her in. Her vision flickered silver again. For just a moment, she could see everything, every tree, every root, every drop of rain falling through the air. The forest lit up in her mind like a map drawn in starlight, and she saw him, the presence she'd felt before, standing in the shadows between two massive oak trees, watching her, waiting. Terror and recognition slammed into her at the same time. She knew him, somehow. Impossibly, she knew him. But that was wrong. That was impossible. He couldn't exist. He was supposed to be. The vision cut off. Darkness and rain and wind rushed back in. She stumbled, nearly fell, caught herself against a tree trunk. Her hands left glowing silver prints on the bark. She looked back over her shoulder, but the shadows between the oaks were empty now. Had he ever really been there? Or was her mind breaking, shattering under the weight of everything that had just happened? It didn't matter. Nothing mattered except survival. She pushed off the tree and ran deeper into the forest, her heart hammering, her power crackling under her skin like caged lightning. The storm screamed around her, and she screamed back, a wordless, desperate sound that was part fury, part fear, part something she didn't have a name for. She was alive. She was free, and she would never, ever go back into the dark. Before we go deeper into her story, before we find out who she really is, what power sleeps inside her, and why they tried to bury her alive, subscribe to Crimson Moon by Benny. These stories keep our fire alive. The rain came down harder now. Each drop felt like ice against Leanna's skin. She ran through the forest, feet slipping on wet leaves, lungs burning with every breath. Behind her, the voices grew louder. Angry voices, hunting voices. She didn't know how long she'd been running. Hours, maybe, or days. Time stopped meaning anything when you were prey. Her chest tightened. Not from running, from something else, something deeper. The silver flame inside her belly stirred and twisted, like a living thing trying to claw its way out. Not now. Please, not now. She pressed her hand against her stomach, willing the fire to stay quiet, stay hidden, stay safe, but the flame never listened. Thunder rolled across the sky. Lightning split the darkness into jagged pieces. And there, right in front of her, stood a shadow. Leanna skidded to a stop. Mud splashed up her legs. Her heart hammered so hard she thought her ribs might crack. The shadow didn't move. It just stood there, tall and still, blocking the path between two massive oak trees. She took a step back. Then another. The shadow stepped forward into a thin beam of moonlight that somehow cut through the storm clouds. He was a man, tall, broad shoulders, dark hair that fell past his collar, dripping with rain. His clothes looked old but expensive. A black coat that moved like water, boots that made no sound on the wet ground. But it was his eyes that made her freeze. Gold, pure gold, like melted sunlight. But there were black embers swirling inside them, tiny flickers of darkness that danced and pulsed. Those eyes looked at her like they'd seen her before, like they'd been searching for her through centuries of night. Leanna's breath caught in her throat. Her wolf senses screamed two different things at once. Run, danger, predator, and also, stay. Safety, home. She'd never felt anything like it. Her instincts were ripping her in half. The man didn't smile, didn't speak. He just stood there, watching her with those impossible eyes, rain streaming down his face like he didn't even notice it. Behind her, the hunting voices got closer, crashing through bushes, shouting her name like a curse. Leanna's body made the choice before her mind could catch up. She bolted to the left, trying to slip past him through the trees. He moved faster than anything human should move. One moment he was 10 feet away. The next, he stood directly in her path. She stumbled back, nearly falling. "Please," she whispered. Her voice sounded small and broken. "Please just let me go." The man tilted his head slightly, studying her. Rain dripped from his hair onto his collar. Then he spoke. His voice was deep and quiet, but it carried over the storm like thunder carries across mountains. Leanna. Her blood turned to ice. She'd never told anyone her real name. Not in this territory. Not in the 3 years she'd been running. She'd used fake names, changed them every few months. Kept herself hidden. How did he know? How? The word barely made it past her lips. He took one step closer. Just one. But even that small movement made her wolf slam against her insides, desperate and confused. "I've been looking for you," he said softly, "for a very long time." The hunting voices burst through the trees behind her. 5 men, wolves, their eyes glowing amber in the darkness. Rain plastered their shirts to their chests. They smelled like anger and wet fur. The biggest one, a man with a scar across his jaw, pointed at her. "There! The cursed one!" Leanna's heart dropped into her stomach. The silver flame inside her blazed hot and bright. Too bright. She couldn't hold it back anymore. "No," she gasped. "No, not here. Not now." Her hands started glowing. Silver light poured through her fingers like liquid moonlight. It was beautiful and terrifying. The scarred man snarled. "She's using forbidden magic! Kill her before she burns us all!" They charged. Leanna threw her hands up, and silver fire exploded from her palms. It shot into the sky like a pillar, bright enough to turn night into day for just a moment. The men screamed and scattered, but the flame took too much. Everything inside Leanna went hollow. Her legs buckled. The world tilted sideways. She was falling. Strong arms caught her before she hit the ground. The man with golden eyes held her like she weighed nothing. His coat wrapped around her, warm and dry, even though everything else was soaked. Leanna tried to push away, but her body wouldn't work. The flame had taken everything. She was empty. A shell. "Shh," he murmured. His voice rumbled through his chest, where her cheek pressed against him. "You're safe now. I'm not safe." Each word took effort. "Never safe." Thunder cracked directly overhead, so loud it shook the trees. But it didn't feel random. It felt like the sky was responding to him, like the storm itself was bowing. The hunting wolves had recovered. They circled, growling low, ready to attack again. The man holding Leanna didn't even look at them. "Leave," he said. Just one word. Calm. Quiet. But that word carried power. Ancient power. The kind that made mountains crack and rivers change direction. The wolves froze. Their growls died in their throats. The scarred one tried to speak. "She's dangerous. The prophecy says," "I said leave." The man's eyes flashed pure black for just a second. Now! The wolves turned and ran, all 5 of them. They disappeared into the forest like ghosts, leaving nothing but the sound of rain and distant thunder. Leanna stared up at the man holding her. Her vision was blurry, going dark at the edges. Who are you? He looked down at her. For the first time, something soft moved through those golden eyes. Something that looked almost like pain. Someone who should have found you sooner, he said. Then everything went black. When Leanna opened her eyes, the rain had stopped. She lay on something soft. Grass, she realized. But not normal grass. This grass glowed faintly, a pale blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Above her, stars filled the sky. More stars than she'd ever seen. They swirled in patterns that looked almost like symbols. Ancient writing made of light. She sat up slowly. Her body ached everywhere, but the emptiness was gone. The flame inside her belly had settled back down to its usual low burn. Where was she? The clearing around her was small, ringed by tall white birch trees. Their bark glowed silver in the starlight. In the center of the clearing sat a small fire. Not silver, just normal orange flames crackling on a pile of wood. And beside the fire sat him, the man with golden eyes. He wasn't looking at her. He stared into the flames, his face unreadable. Without the rain and darkness, Leanna could see him more clearly. He was beautiful. Not pretty. Beautiful in the way mountains are beautiful. Strong and old and dangerous. His face looked young, maybe mid-20s, but his eyes looked ancient. Like they'd watched centuries pass. He wore the same black coat, but now she could see silver embroidery along the edges. Symbols she didn't recognize. The same symbols that swirled in the stars above. Leanna's hands trembled. She pulled her knees to her chest, making herself small. "This is a moon clearing," she whispered. "A sacred place." He finally looked at her. "Yes." "Why did you bring me here?" "Because you needed to be somewhere the silver flame couldn't hurt you. Or anyone else." His voice stayed calm, gentle even, but there was weight behind it. This ground was blessed by the first wolves. It absorbs wild magic. Leanna looked down at the glowing grass beneath her. She could feel it now. A soft pulling sensation, like the earth itself was drinking tiny sips of her power. Not taking it. Just calming it. "You're trembling," the man said. "I don't know who you are." The words came out sharper than she meant. Fear made her voice hard. "You knew my name. You knew what I was. And you brought me to a sacred place, like you have every right to be here." "I do have that right." "How?" He was quiet for a moment. The fire crackled. Somewhere in the forest, an owl called. "My name is Theron," he said finally. "I'm an alpha, one of the old ones. My bloodline goes back to the first packs, before the territories split. Before the wars." Leanna's throat went dry. Old alphas were myths, stories whispered around campfires. They were supposed to be extinct, killed in the Great Purge 300 years ago. "That's impossible," she breathed. "Many impossible things are real." Theron's eyes caught the firelight, making the black embers inside them dance. "You should know that better than anyone, Leanna." There it was again. Her name. She hugged her knees tighter. "How do you know my name? I never told anyone." "I've been hiding for 3 years." 14 years, he corrected quietly. Her heart stopped. "You were exiled when you were 14 years old," Theron continued. "Your birth pack cast you out because your silver flame frightened them. They called you cursed, broken, dangerous." He paused. They were wrong. Tears burned behind Leanna's eyes. She blinked them back hard. "How do you know that?" "Because I've been searching for you since the night you were exiled." His voice dropped lower, almost a whisper. "I felt the moment your flame awakened. It called to something in me. Something I thought was dead." Leanna stared at him. The words didn't make sense. Nothing made sense. "Why?" The question came out barely audible. Why would you search for me? Theron stood slowly. He moved with careful grace, like he was trying not to scare her. When he walked closer, Lyanna's instincts screamed again. Run! Stay! Run! Stay! He stopped a few feet away and crouched down, bringing himself to her eye level. Because the silver flame isn't a curse, he said. It's a gift, a rare one. There hasn't been a silver flame carrier in over 200 years. A gift? Lyanna's voice cracked. I almost killed a child. I burned down half my pack's storage. I can't control it. Every time I feel scared or angry or too much of anything, it explodes. That's not a gift. That's a nightmare. It's a gift without a teacher, Theron said. The old ways were lost. The knowledge of how to train silver flame carriers died with the purge. You've been trying to control ancient magic with no guidance. No wonder it feels like drowning. Something in Lyanna's chest cracked. A tiny fissure in the wall she'd built around her heart over 14 years of running and hiding and hating herself. You're saying it's not my fault? No. Theron's eyes softened. It was never your fault. The tears came then. Lyanna couldn't stop them. They poured down her cheeks hot and fast, washing away years of shame and fear and guilt that had lived inside her like poison. She covered her face with her hands, shoulders shaking. She didn't hear Theron move, but suddenly his coat settled over her shoulders. It was warm and heavy and smelled like cedar and night air. I'm sorry, she choked out. I'm sorry, I don't usually. Don't apologize for being human, he said quietly. They sat in silence while Lyanna cried. The fire crackled. The stars wheeled overhead. The glowing grass hummed its soft lullaby. Finally, when the tears slowed, Lyanna wiped her face with the edge of Theron's coat. Why does your presence quiet the flame? She asked. Her voice was rough and tired. I can feel it. When you're close, the fire calms down. It stops fighting me. Theron was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried something that sounded almost like pain. Because your flame recognizes mine. Lyanna's head snapped up. You have silver flame? No. He looked away, staring into the forest. I have something older, shadow fire, the opposite of silver flame, light and dark. They're meant to balance each other. I don't understand. There's an old prophecy. Theron's jaw tightened. About the return of the silver flame. It says, when the child of the second light awakens, the shadows will rise to meet her. Together, they'll either save the wolf world or destroy it. Cold dread poured through Lyanna's veins. You think I'm this child of the second light? I know you are. How? Theron turned back to her. In his eyes, she saw centuries of loneliness, of waiting, of searching, because I'm the shadow that's been waiting for you. Lyanna didn't sleep that night. How could she? Every word Theron spoke felt like a key turning in a lock she didn't know existed. They sat by the fire, and he told her things. Not everything, but enough. He told her about the first age, when silver and shadow wolves walked together, when balance kept the wild magic from consuming everything. He told her about the purge, when fearful alphas hunted down anyone with ancient gifts. How they killed the silver flame carriers because they didn't understand them, feared them. He told her about the prophecy, written in the sacred caves beneath the mountains, about a girl who would be born with silver fire in her soul, and how she would either unite the fractured packs or burn them all to ash. That's a lot of pressure for someone who just wanted to disappear, Lyanna said quietly. Theron almost smiled. Almost. Destiny doesn't ask permission. What if I don't want this destiny? Then you keep running. He poked the fire with a stick, sending sparks spiraling into the dark. But the flame will keep growing. Eventually, it will consume you. Or worse, it will explode and consume everything around you. Lyanna pulled his coat tighter around her shoulders. She knew he was right. She could feel the flame getting stronger every year, harder to contain. What's the alternative? You let me teach you. Theron looked at her. You learn to control the flame. Master it. Become what you were always meant to be. And what's that? Free. The word hung in the air between them. beautiful and terrifying. Leanna thought about the last 14 years. Running, hiding, using fake names. Never staying anywhere longer than a few months. Never making friends. Never having a home. Never being free. If I say yes, she said slowly, what happens? We go to the shrine of the first flame. It's an ancient place, built by the first wolves. There are answers there, guidance, maybe even others who can help. Others like me? No. Theron's voice went soft. There's no one like you anymore. But there are wolves who still follow the old ways, who believe in the prophecy. They've been waiting. Leanna hugged her knees again. A habit when she felt small and scared. What if I can't do it? What if I'm not strong enough? Theron was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his words were careful, gentle. I watched you face down 5 hostile wolves while exhausted and terrified. I saw you unleash enough silver flame to light up the entire forest, even though you knew it would drain you. And then I watched you cry, truly cry, for the first time in probably years. He paused. You're already stronger than you know, Leanna. Something warm bloomed in her chest. Not the flame. Something else. Something that felt dangerous in a completely different way. She looked at Theron, really looked at him, at the ancient sadness in his eyes, at the careful way he held himself, like he was constantly aware of his own power and trying not to let it hurt anyone. He'd been alone for centuries, waiting for someone like her. Someone who could balance him. Why do you care so much? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Theron met her gaze. For just a moment, his carefully controlled expression cracked, and she saw something raw underneath. Because I know what it's like, he said quietly, to carry power that everyone fears, to be hunted for something you can't control, to spend every moment wondering if you're a monster or a miracle. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. I know what it's like to be alone. Leanna's breath caught. In that moment, she understood. They were the same. 2 sides of the same impossible coin. I'm scared, she admitted. Good. Theron's lips quirked in the smallest smile she'd seen from him. Fear means you understand what's at stake. It's the ones who feel nothing that are truly dangerous. Dawn started creeping across the sky. Soft gray light filtered through the birch trees, making their white bark glow like bones. Leanna took a deep breath. Then another. The flame inside her pulsed once, twice, waiting for her decision. Okay, she said. Take me to the shrine. They walked for 2 days through forests so old they felt alive. Trees that had stood for thousands of years. Rivers that ran cold and clear, whispering secrets to the stones beneath. Theron didn't talk much as they traveled, but his presence felt constant, steady, like an anchor in rough water. Leanna found herself watching him when she thought he wasn't looking. The way he moved through the forest like he was part of it. How animals didn't flee when he passed. They paused, watching with curious eyes, like they recognized something ancient and familiar. Once, a deer walked right up to him. A big buck with antlers that spread like tree branches. It pressed its nose to Theron's palm, and he murmured something too quiet for Leanna to hear. When the deer wandered away, Leanna asked, What did you say to it? I thanked it for sharing its path with us. You speak to animals? Everything speaks, Theron said. Most people just forgot how to listen. Leanna thought about that as they walked, about all the things she'd stopped listening to, her own heart, her own dreams, the quiet voice inside that whispered, maybe she wasn't broken after all. On the second evening, they reached the shrine. Leanna knew they were close because the air changed. It got thicker somehow, heavy with old magic, the kind of magic that remembered when the world was young. The forest opened into a clearing, and in the center stood a cave mouth. But not a normal cave. This entrance was carved with symbols that glowed faint blue in the fading light. The same symbols from Theron's coat, the same ones that swirled in the stars. The shrine of the first flame, Theron said quietly. Leanna's heart hammered. The silver flame inside her surged, responding to something in the cave. It didn't feel dangerous. It felt like recognition, like coming home after a long journey. "What's inside?" she whispered. "Answers. History. And something that's been waiting for you." Theron started forward, but Leanna grabbed his arm. His skin was warm under her fingers, and for just a second, she felt his power thrumming beneath the surface. Shadow fire. Dark and vast and carefully controlled. He stopped, looking down at her hand on his arm, then at her face. "What if I'm not who the prophecy needs?" The fear spilled out. "What if I'm just a broken girl with too much power and not enough control?" Theron turned to face her fully. He reached up slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently took her chin in his hand. His touch was surprisingly soft. "Then you'll be a broken girl who tried," he said. "But I don't believe that's who you are. I think you're exactly who you're meant to be. You just haven't seen yourself clearly yet." His golden eyes held hers. Steady, sure, unshakable. Leanna realized she'd been holding her breath. She let it out slowly. "Okay," she whispered. They walked into the cave together. The moment Leanna crossed the threshold, the symbols on the walls blazed to life. Bright silver light poured from the carvings, illuminating everything. The cave was bigger than she expected. The ceiling rose high overhead, disappearing into shadow. And the walls were covered in pictures, thousands of them, stories carved in stone, wolves running under moonlight, flames dancing in silver and shadow. A woman with fire in her hands, standing beside a man wreathed in darkness. They faced an enemy together, their powers intertwined. Leanna walked forward like she was in a trance. Her fingers traced the carvings, and she felt warmth pulse under her touch. The flame inside her responded, glowing brighter. "What is this place?" she breathed. "The history of the First Age," Theron said. He stood near the entrance, watching her. "Before the split, before the purge, this is what we were." Leanna moved deeper into the cave. The silver light grew brighter with every step, like the cave itself was waking up. At the very back, she found something that made her stop breathing. A stone altar. And above it, carved larger than all the other images, was a woman. She stood with her arms raised, silver flames pouring from her hands like waterfalls. Wolves knelt around her, dozens of them, and they didn't look afraid. They looked peaceful, protected. "The first silver flame," Theron said quietly. He'd come to stand beside her. "They called her Alira. She lived 3,000 years ago. The prophecy says her soul would return when the wolf world needed her most." Leanna's hands shook. "You think I'm her? Reborn?" "I think you carry her gift." Theron's voice was careful. "Whether you're her soul returned or just someone born with the same power, does it matter? The flame chose you." Leanna stared at the carving. At Alira, frozen in stone, eternal and powerful and not afraid. "I don't feel chosen," she whispered. "I feel lost." "Then let me help you find your way." She turned to look at Theron. He stood close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his skin. Shadow and flame, dark and light. Standing in an ancient shrine that remembered when they were meant to walk together. "Why do you believe in me so much?" The question ached in her throat. Theron was quiet. In his eyes, something old and painful stirred. "Because 300 years ago, I failed someone like you." His voice went rough. "Another silver flame carrier. She was young, scared. And I was too cautious, too careful. I waited too long to help her, and the frightened alphas found her first. They killed her before she could learn to control her gift." He paused, jaw tight. "I've carried that failure for 3 centuries. I won't fail again." Leanna's heart cracked open. She saw it now. The weight he carried. The guilt. The endless years of waiting for a chance at redemption. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "Don't be sorry. Just let me help you." Before Leanna could respond, the cave trembled. A low rumble rolled through the stone like distant thunder. The carvings on the walls blazed brighter. Silver light poured from them in waves, and the temperature dropped so fast Lyanna's breath fogged in the air. "What's happening?" she gasped. Theron's eyes went wide, not with fear, with awe. "The shrine is acknowledging you," he said. "It hasn't done this in over 200 years." The silver light gathered at the altar. It swirled and condensed, forming shapes in the air. Not solid. More like smoke made of moonlight. And then Lyanna heard it. Voices. Whispers in a language she didn't know, but somehow understood. They called to her. Drew her forward. She walked toward the altar like she was dreaming. Theron said something behind her, but the words got lost in the whispers. The moment her fingers touched the stone altar, the world disappeared. Lyanna stood in a different place. Not the cave, somewhere else, a forest, but not any forest she'd ever seen. The trees were massive, their trunks wide enough to build houses inside, and they glowed. Every leaf, every branch, shimmering with soft light. The sky above was impossible. 2 moons hung in the purple twilight, one silver, one black. They circled each other slowly, locked in an eternal dance. "Where am I?" Lyanna's voice echoed strangely. "You stand in the memory of what was." She spun around. A woman stood behind her, tall and regal, with long hair that moved like liquid silver. Her eyes were the same color as Lyanna's flame, and her presence felt vast, ancient, powerful. "Elira," Lyanna breathed. The woman smiled. "I am what remains of her, an echo, a memory preserved in stone and magic." She stepped closer, and Lyanna felt the air vibrate with power. "I have waited long for you, child of the second light." "I don't understand." Lyanna's voice shook. "I'm nobody, just a girl who can't control her own power." "You are the prophecy made flesh." Elira's voice rang like bells. "Born when the old world and new world teeter on the edge, your flame will either light the way forward or burn everything to ash." "That's what I'm afraid of. I don't know how to control it. I've hurt people. I could hurt more." Elira reached out and placed her palm against Lyanna's chest. Where she touched, warmth bloomed. Not burning, gentle, like sunshine. "The flame does not wish to hurt," she said softly. "It wishes to protect, to shield, to illuminate. But you fight it, hate it, fear it, and that fear is what makes it wild." Tears pricked Lyanna's eyes. "How do I stop being afraid?" "You don't." Elira's smile was sad and kind. "Fear is part of being alive, but you must learn to walk beside your fear, not run from it. The flame is not separate from you. It is you, your passion, your fierce need to protect those you love, your unwillingness to bow to those who would hurt the innocent." She paused. "These are not weaknesses. They are your greatest strengths." Lyanna's breath hitched. No one had ever said words like that to her. Ever. "What if I fail?" she whispered. "Then you will fail while trying to be brave. That is no small thing." Elira stepped back, and the forest around them began to fade. "But I do not believe you will fail. You carry my gift, and you have found your shadow. Together, you are complete." "Wait!" Lyanna reached for her. "I don't know what to do." "Trust yourself. Trust him. And when the time comes, do not fear the flame. Become it." The world dissolved into silver light. Lyanna gasped and stumbled backward. Strong hands caught her. Theron, steadying her before she fell. They were back in the cave. The altar glowed softly, and the carvings on the walls pulsed with fading light. "What happened?" Theron demanded. His voice was sharp with worry. "You touched the altar, and your eyes went pure silver. You stood there for 10 minutes without moving." 10 minutes? Lyanna's legs felt weak. It felt like seconds. She told him everything, about the impossible forest, about Elira, about what the ancient silver flame had said. When she finished, Theron was quiet for a long time. "She's right," he said finally. "About all of it. You fight the flame because you're afraid of it, but fear only makes it more dangerous. You need to trust it. Trust yourself. Leanna looked down at her hands. They looked normal, small, human, but she knew what lived beneath the skin, what power coiled in her bones. I don't know how to trust something that's hurt people I loved. Then start smaller. Theron's voice gentled. Trust me. I won't let you hurt anyone, and I won't let anyone hurt you. She looked up at him, at those golden eyes that had searched for her across years and miles, at the careful strength in how he held himself, at the shadow fire that hummed beneath his skin, dark and patient and waiting. Something shifted inside her, a tiny loosening of the knot of fear she'd carried for so long. Okay, she whispered. I'll try. Theron's expression softened. For just a moment, he looked less like an ancient alpha and more like a man who'd finally found something he thought he'd lost forever. That's all I ask. They left the shrine as dawn broke across the sky. The forest was waking up. Birds sang. Deer moved through the underbrush. The world continued, unaware that everything had changed. Leanna felt different. Lighter somehow, like she'd set down a weight she didn't know she'd been carrying. But that lightness didn't last long. They were half a day from the shrine, when the first howl echoed through the trees. Theron stopped instantly, his whole body going tense. His eyes flashed black. What is it? Leanna asked. Trouble? He turned in a slow circle, scanning the forest. Multiple packs, moving fast, coming this way. How many? Too many. Before Leanna could respond, wolves burst from the trees. Not 5 this time. 20, 30, more. They circled, growling low, their eyes glowing amber and red in the shadows. Some were in wolf form. Others stood as humans, but their power was unmistakable. And at the front of the pack stood a man Leanna recognized, Alpha Vardis, the leader of the Northern Territories. She'd run through his land once, years ago, barely escaping with her life. He was massive, built like a mountain, with gray hair and scars covering his arms. His eyes were cold, calculating. Well, well, Vardis said. His voice rumbled like stones grinding together. The cursed flame and the shadow ghost, together. Just like the old stories said. Theron stepped in front of Leanna. A subtle movement, but protective. This isn't your business, Vardis. Isn't it? The Alpha smiled, showing teeth. A weapon walks through my territory. A weapon that could burn us all. I'd say that's very much my business. I'm not a weapon, Leanna said. Her voice shook, but she forced the words out. I'm just trying to survive, Vardis laughed. It wasn't a kind sound. You're a flame that can't be controlled, a prophesied destroyer. The Council has declared you must be contained, or eliminated. Cold dread poured through Leanna's veins. The silver flame inside her flared, responding to her fear. No, not now. Don't lose control. But the flame didn't listen. It never did. Silver light began leaking from her hands. Leanna! Theron's voice cut through her panic. Calm. Steady. Breathe. I've got this. There are too many, she whispered. I know. Vardis raised his hand. All around them, wolves tensed, ready to attack. Take them both, Vardis commanded. Alive if possible. Dead if necessary. They charged. What happened next was something Leanna would never forget. Theron moved. He didn't shift into wolf form. He didn't need to. Shadow erupted from him like a living thing. Black fire that didn't burn. It consumed. It swallowed light and sound and hope. The first wave of wolves hit the shadow and simply stopped. Frozen, trapped in darkness that wrapped around them like chains. Theron moved through them like water, fast, graceful, precise. Every movement was controlled. He didn't kill. He didn't maim. He simply stopped them. Over and over. But there were too many. For every wolf he stopped, 2 more took their place. They kept coming. Relentless. Leanna watched in horror as they began to overwhelm him. Claws raked across his shoulder. Teeth found his leg. Blood. His blood. Splashed dark against the ground. No, Leanna breathed. The flame inside her roared. She felt it rising. Uncontrollable. Unstoppable. About to explode and consume everything. But then she remembered Elira's words. Do not fear the flame. Become it. Lyanna stopped fighting. She let go. The silver flame poured out of her, not wild, but like a river finally freed from a dam. It flowed from her hands, her chest, her eyes. It filled the clearing with light so bright that wolves cried out and stumbled back, but it didn't burn them. The flame moved through the air like water, like wind, like something alive and gentle. It wrapped around Theron, pulling the attacking wolves away. It surrounded Lyanna in a protective circle, and for the first time in her life, Lyanna felt the flame listening to her. She raised her hand, and the fire rose. She lowered it, and the fire calmed. It wasn't fighting her anymore. It was dancing with her. The wolves backed away, their eyes wide with fear and awe. Vardis stared at her. For the first time, she saw uncertainty in his face. Impossible, he breathed. You're controlling it. Lyanna's voice came out clear and strong. I'm not your weapon. I'm not your enemy. I'm just someone trying to find my place in this world. The flame pulsed around her like a heartbeat. But if you force me to choose between your fear and my survival, I will choose survival. Every time. Vardis hesitated. She could see him calculating, weighing options. Then, slowly, he raised his hand. Fall back, he commanded. The wolves obeyed. They melted into the forest, disappearing like they'd never been there. Vardis looked at her for a long moment. The council will hear of this, he said quietly. They will not stop hunting you. Then I'll keep surviving, Lyanna replied. Vardis almost smiled. It wasn't friendly, but it held something like respect. Perhaps the prophecy was right about you after all. He shifted into wolf form and vanished into the trees. The moment they were alone, Lyanna's legs gave out. Theron caught her before she hit the ground. You did it, he said. Wonder filled his voice. You controlled the flame. Lyanna looked down at her hands. They still glowed softly, but the light was gentle now. Calm. I stopped fighting it, she whispered. I stopped being afraid. No. Theron turned her to face him. His hands were warm on her shoulders. You didn't stop being afraid. You were terrified. But you were brave anyway. Their eyes met. Gold and silver. Shadow and flame. In that moment, something clicked into place between them. Something deeper than prophecy. Deeper than magic. Connection. Thank you, Lyanna said softly, for believing in me when no one else would. Theron's expression did something complicated, something that looked painful and tender at the same time. Always, he said, and for the first time in 14 years, Lyanna felt like maybe, just maybe, she'd finally found home. They walked for 3 more days before they reached what Theron called safe territory. Lyanna didn't know there was such a thing. Her whole life had been about running from one dangerous place to another, never staying, never settling. But as they crossed into a valley between 2 mountains, she felt the air change. It got warmer, gentler. The trees here were old and thick, their branches creating a canopy that filtered sunlight into soft green pools. Where are we? She asked. The Hollow. Theron's voice carried something like affection. One of the last free territories. No alpha controls it. Wolves who follow the old ways gather here. As they walked deeper into the valley, Lyanna started seeing signs of life. Small cabins built between trees. Smoke rising from cooking fires. The sound of children laughing. Children. Lyanna's chest tightened. She hadn't been around children since the accident. Since the little boy she'd almost killed with her uncontrolled flame. Theron, she said quietly. Maybe I shouldn't. You're safe here, he interrupted gently. Everyone in the Hollow knows about the prophecy. They've been waiting for you. That didn't make her feel better. It made her feel more pressure, more weight. But she didn't have time to argue because wolves started emerging from the trees. Not threatening. Curious. They were all different ages. Some old with gray fur and wise eyes. some young and strong. Children who shifted playfully from human to wolf and back, laughing. They all stopped and stared when they saw Leanna. An old woman with silver hair approached first. She moved slowly, leaning on a carved walking stick, but her eyes were sharp and clear. She stopped in front of Leanna and studied her for a long moment. Then she smiled. "The child of the second light," the old woman said softly. "We've been waiting for you, dear child." Leanna's throat went tight. "I'm not sure I'm who you think I am." The old woman laughed. It was a warm sound, like honey. "Oh, you're exactly who we think you are. We just need to help you see it." More wolves gathered. They didn't crowd. They kept a respectful distance. But Leanna could feel their attention, their hope. It was terrifying. A young girl, maybe 7 years old, broke free from her mother's hand and ran forward. She had dark curls and bright green eyes. "Are you really made of fire?" the girl asked, bouncing on her toes. Leanna froze. She looked at Theron helplessly. He just smiled. Actually smiled. It transformed his whole face, making him look younger. Almost happy. "Go on," he said quietly. "Show her." Leanna looked back at the little girl, at her innocent curiosity, at the complete lack of fear in her eyes. Slowly, carefully, Leanna held out her hand. She thought about the flame, not as an enemy, not as something to fight, but as part of herself. Silver light bloomed in her palm. Soft and gentle, it formed the shape of a butterfly, wings made of flame that didn't burn. The little girl gasped in delight. "It's beautiful." Other children crept closer, eyes wide with wonder. Leanna felt something crack inside her chest, something that had been frozen for 14 years. She made more shapes, a bird, a flower, a tiny wolf that ran in circles on her palm. The children laughed and clapped, and Leanna realized she was smiling. Actually smiling. When was the last time she'd smiled? The old woman nodded approvingly. "See? You're not a weapon, child. You're a wonder." That night, the wolves of the hollow held a gathering. They built a massive fire in the center of the valley and sang old songs. Songs about the first age, about silver and shadow, about balance and hope. Leanna sat beside Theron, watching the flames dance. She felt peaceful, more peaceful than she'd been in years. "They really believe in me," she said quietly. "Yes. What if I let them down?" Theron was quiet for a moment. The firelight caught in his golden eyes, making them glow. "Then you'll get back up and try again," he said. "That's all anyone can do." Leanna looked at him, really looked at him, at the careful strength in his jaw, at the ancient sadness that lived behind his eyes, even when he smiled, at the way he sat just close enough that she could feel his warmth, but not so close that he crowded her. "Why are you really doing this?" she asked. "It's not just about the prophecy, or the girl you couldn't save 300 years ago. There's something else." Theron's jaw tightened. For a long moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he spoke, so quietly she almost missed it. "Because I'm tired of being alone." The words hit her like a physical blow. She understood. Gods, did she understand? Without thinking, she reached over and took his hand. His fingers closed around hers. Warm, strong, careful. They sat like that, hands joined, watching the fire burn and the stars wheel overhead. Two lonely souls who'd finally found someone who understood. The peace lasted exactly 3 days. On the third night, Leanna woke to screaming. She bolted upright in the small cabin they'd given her, heart racing. Outside, the valley was chaos. Wolves running, howling, fighting. She threw open the door and froze. Shadow creatures poured into the hollow, not normal wolves. These were things made of darkness and rage. Their eyes glowed red. Their mouths dripped with something that looked like liquid night, and leading them was a figure Leanna didn't recognize. Tall, hooded, radiating power that made her skin crawl. "Where is she?" the figure demanded. Its voice echoed unnaturally. "Where is the flame?" Theron appeared beside Leanna. He grabbed her arm. "We need to go, now! We can't leave them!" Lyanna gestured at the chaos. They're being slaughtered! They're buying us time! Theron's voice was harsh with urgency. That creature is here for you. If we stay, more will die. Lyanna's heart shattered. But she knew he was right. They ran. Behind them, the sounds of battle echoed through the valley. Screams, howls, the terrible sound of shadow creatures tearing through anything in their path. Lyanna's silver flame burned hot with rage and grief, but she didn't let it explode. She held it in, controlled it. They ran for hours through the dark forest. Finally, when dawn started creeping across the sky, they stopped in a small cave. Lyanna collapsed against the wall, gasping for breath. "Who was that?" she demanded. "What were those things?" Theron's face was grim. "Void walkers. Creatures from the time before time. Someone summoned them." He paused. "Someone powerful." "Why are they after me?" "Because you're dangerous to them." Theron turned to look at her. "The prophecy doesn't just say you'll unite or destroy the wolf world. It says you'll wake the old magic. That threatens anyone who's gained power through fear and control. There are alphas who would rather see you dead than risk losing their authority." Lyanna felt sick. "So this will never end. They'll keep hunting me forever." "Not if you become stronger than them." "How am I supposed to do that?" Theron's eyes flashed. "By finishing what we started. The shrine showed you the path. Now we need to walk it." "What path?" He was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that changed everything. "The prophecy speaks of 4 sacred sites. The shrine of the first flame was the first, but there are 3 more. Each one holds a piece of knowledge, a piece of power. If you complete all 4 trials, you'll ascend fully. Become what Elira was, a true silver flame bearer." Lyanna stared at him. "You didn't tell me this before." "Because I wasn't sure you were ready. But after what I saw in the hollow, how you controlled the flame, how you kept it from exploding even when you were terrified, I know you can do this." "And if I can't?" Theron's expression went soft. He reached out and cupped her cheek gently. "Then I'll be there to catch you when you fall." Lyanna's breath caught. His hand was warm against her skin. His touch was tender in a way that made her chest ache. For just a moment, they stayed like that. Close enough to breathe the same air. Close enough that she could see the black embers swirling in his golden eyes. "Theron," she whispered. "Yes?" "I'm scared." "I know." His thumb brushed her cheekbone softly. "But you don't have to be scared alone anymore." Something broke loose inside her. Something that had been locked away for so long, she'd forgotten it existed. She leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his. "Promise me," she whispered. "Promise you won't leave me." "I promise." His voice was fierce, absolute. "I've waited centuries for you, Lyanna. I'm not going anywhere." They stayed like that as dawn filled the cave with soft light. 2 broken people learning what it meant to be whole. This is where we pause. Where the flame and shadow stand together at the edge of everything. Where Lyanna must choose between the safety of hiding and the danger of becoming. Because power doesn't ask if you're ready. It doesn't wait for permission. It just burns. And sometimes you have to let yourself burn to rise from the ashes. If this story sparked something inside you, if you felt the flame, if you understood the fear, if you ached for 2 souls finally finding each other, then subscribe to Crimson Moon by Benny. Because every flame has a story. And every story deserves to be told. Until next time, stay wild, stay brave, and never let anyone make you small. The prophecy is just beginning, and she is only starting to understand what it means to burn.